Welcome to Connected Conversations. I am Elena Petrova, founder and CEO of Adastra Inc. Tune in as we share inspiring stories, connect with local heroes, and discover solutions that uplift us.
I'm trying to impact because I've experienced it and I've seen it firsthand. And I've done it in places where a lot of people didn't think that it was possible to be done. And I'm not saying that I accomplished everything, but going to a place like Ferguson, even to this day, years later, I still meet so many people that when we're having a conversation, especially people in law enforcement, that they are still just dumbfounded at the notion that I had the courage to take the Ferguson chief job because so many people would never have taken that job.
Welcome to Connected Conversations. And today we are going to be talking about trust because there are so many different communities across our country who might be needing advice of my guest today. There is this line that we're probably all aware from our childhood. It takes century to build a trust and only a few seconds to ruin it. I have Jason P. Armstrong with me here today, and I have his book, which I highly recommend, where we are going to be talking about how, with the communication and leadership, we can rebuild trust or we can build it from scratch. At the same time, trust is something to be earned or is given. What is trust to you, Jason?
For me, trust is the foundation for any healthy relationship and also any sustainable relationship. And when I think about community and what it takes to have a healthy community and the work that goes into trying to build bridges, whether you are working from a place where there's already established trust, you're working from a place where you're trying to build trust that has never existed, or you're working from a place where you had trust, but something has derailed that trust and now you're trying to earn it back. You can only do that in the space of community. And throughout my journey in leadership, working in public safety, if the community didn't have any trust in us, then we were always going to struggle and have challenges in the things that we were trying to do and how we were trying to show up for the community. So for me, trust was always at the top of the list of what we needed to be working on, and we needed to have in the forefront of our mind every day when we went out in the community trying to provide the service that we were lucky to be able to provide for the community.
There are so many different things that we can learn from Jason. I'm going to pedal back a little bit, and I remember how I met you. We met through the community of women in tech entrepreneurs. And Jason, you were a keynote speaker.
Yes.
And quite frankly, your line of service, and thank you for your service,
Thank you.
had absolutely nothing to do with women in tech entrepreneurs, which I stayed to the end. I watched the keynote, and that really touched me on so many different levels because you were talking about the fact, and you were very honest. You came to the stage and said, I have no idea all the things that you guys were discussing here about bringing technology in different communities globally. I'm not a tech person, but here's what I know about trust. And then you talked and you brought back all the memories. Michael Brown. We talked about Ferguson. We talked about protests across the country, Black Lives Matter protests. We talked about, and it was all happening through pandemic. And we would think that the country started healing. Here we are today with the protests. Communities, in some of the communities, are being torn apart. And what can we learn from it?
It's tough when you have people in your community that are negatively impacted by, we'll just call it society at large, whatever contributes to it. And it's even more challenging and difficult when you are responsible for the safety and the relationships in the community, but outside forces are contributing to why that may be um, derailed in what we're seeing. You know, a lot of communities across the country right now, we see all of the images from ICE raids and the National Guard being deployed in some cities and things. And, you know, not here to talk politics about what's right or wrong in that instance, but what is a fact is once all of this is over with and once, you know, those individuals leave communities, there is still a community that's left to reconcile with what has happened and how people have been impacted and some of the traumas that individuals have been exposed to as a result of that, and who's left to deal and navigate with that. It's the people in the community, from the community, and of the community, and that you know that makes up the people that live there, that makes up public safety that's in that community. And being the police chief in Ferguson, coming in after the Mike Brown incident, but then having to deal with the riots after George Floyd was killed, you know, I got to see firsthand how devastating the ills of society can be on a community. You know, when I got to Ferguson and I started talking with people out in the community, one of the things that I regularly heard from people is that they were still healing from what the community had experienced years earlier in the aftermath of Mike Brown being killed. And you have a community that's already struggling with their history, and it's not, you know, a long distance history. It's just a few years old. And then we have George Floyd get killed, and what that sparked for a lot of people, especially for us in Ferguson, it was almost like a reminder, and it brought to the forefront, you know, what Ferguson had already experienced, and what's left with that, and the work that went into it is having a community that you're just trying to figure out how can I show up for the people in my community, knowing that everybody doesn't want the same thing for me. Everybody doesn't desire the same things. But how can I show up in a way that when people have an interaction or an engagement with me, they leave that space not necessarily feeling better, but they leave that space having some confidence in who at least this one leader in their community is. And that was a big part for me. And that's why I speak a lot about, you know, showing up as your authentic self.
Yeah.
Like people are not easily fooled when they think somebody shows up and they're just trying to pander to them, you know, for whatever reason. One thing that I was committed to and I was intentional about was showing up as my authentic self, because I wanted people to get to know who Jason Armstrong was. I wanted people to see Jason Armstrong. And I always had this saying that if I can get people to like Jason Armstrong, then I can get them to love Chief Armstrong, because Chief Armstrong is fueled by Jason Armstrong. And I think that's something that when we talk about community and what community looks like and how do we build trust in communities, is people have to be able to be their authentic self, knowing and understanding that everybody is not going to align with that, or everybody may not like that. But if we can create spaces where we welcome that, and it's a welcome space for everybody to show up as their true authentic self, that leads to some of the conversations that we need to have in communities. And the more conversations we can have, and the more we can break down some of the stereotypes and the prejudices and all of the things that a lot of us bring to the spaces that we enter, that's where we really start connecting with people. And when we can start connecting with people in a really genuine, authentic way, from my experience, it has taught me that that's when we start learning that we actually have more in common with people than we do differences. We just have to create an environment for us to get to that level of the conversation.
And you probably learn a lot from experience in Ferguson. From your book, I learned that there are other agencies within the country who are contacting you when, after the death of George Floyd, there are multiple protests across the country. What are you? I'm going to paraphrase the question. What did you learn for yourself, and how to build those bridges with the communities? Because your lessons were taken to the next level across the country?
What I learned, I would say there's two main components to what I learned. One is the community component, and the other is the individual
Mm-hmm.
component. And what I learned from the community is no one entity can drive change alone. It doesn't matter how bad I may want things to get better or how bad I may want things to change or improve. Just because I'm the police chief doesn't give me the automatic power and authority to drive change. That has to be done in partnership with people. People inside my organization have to get on board and have to be partners with me in that effort. People out in the community have to get on board with the partnership idea and us working together to figure out and identify what are some things that would be beneficial for the community. What is it that we don't see right now that we should be seeing? What are some things that we can try that we haven't tried before, just to see if we have some different outcomes? So from the community, it really was, how do we drive partnerships and not our normal typical partnerships? And that was one of the things that, I think set me apart from some other police chiefs around the country. It was really the people who I was willing to partner with, or the people that I saw the value in them for me to partner with. Because it's not necessarily the most successful business person, or somebody that belongs to this community or that community. I really sought out people, one, who did not like the police or who did not trust the police. Those are the individuals that I would target to try to form partnerships with, to see, if I could get an in. Because if they felt how they felt about, public safety, law enforcement, and police, and people in their circle of influence felt the same way, if I could build a relationship with somebody in there, forge a partnership where they could, if I could earn some of their trust, and then they could take back and go to their areas of influence and share some of the information that I was trying to get to that part of the community. Like that was really where I started to see some success, because I had a voice in spaces that law enforcement typically never had a voice. And once I started making inroads with that, and people got to see, just genuinely who I was and what I was trying to do, my level of commitment for this to be a better community for everybody in this community, that started getting me in places that we had never been before. So that really highlighted for me just the significance of partnerships in communities and doing this with community, not just sitting back thinking that I know everything that the community needs just because I'm the police chief. It doesn't work that way. The second part, and what I would say was more internal to me individually, is in doing work and doing community work, like it is a daunting task. And it can feel overwhelming at times. It is overwhelming at times. One of the things that I had to learn was to give myself some grace at times. In my profession, like, we focus on bad things because that's what we deal with all day, every day. We deal with the problems of the world, the problems of society, and bad things show up for us every day because people look to us to solve their problems or to deal with the bad things that are in their life. And it's easy to get wrapped up in just seeing the bad in everything, where I had to learn that even in spaces where I may look at it as a failure, but I had to give myself grace to acknowledge that there are some successes intertwined into the failures in this space right here, and to not just focus solely on the negatives or the bad or this didn't go exactly how I wanted it to go, but also being able to give myself some grace that, this part of it actually went pretty okay, and this right here was a positive for us. This was a small win in this space. Because if you just get so consumed by the negative, it can destroy you, and that's one of the things. I mean, when we see what's going on in the country right now, I know it's hard for a lot of people to see some of the positives in their life, but I would always challenge people, just if you really take a moment to really look at what's going on around you and what is happening in your life right now. We normally can find some victories or some small wins in there, and we really have to we really have to lock in on those and appreciate those, because we can't just focus solely on what's going wrong or the negatives and the ills that we see.
Yeah, so right about this. And you talk a lot about gratitude in your book too. That's pretty much one of the way how we build community and build confidence with leadership, which will lead me to my next question. But before that, let's talk about communication,
Mm-hmm.
because you also talked several times, and there were your stories that to me was great example how leadership in combination with communication can either gain break relationship, whatever that relationship
Mm-hmm.
is, or build it or rebuild it, whatever the situation is. We often think that if you are a leader, particularly if you are a leader in law enforcement or military, you are going to communicate by the voice of command. I learned from you in your book that you meet the people wherever they are in your communication, and that's how you can de-escalate the conflict, or you can connect. Could you speak a little bit what's communication to you, and what strategies or tactics you use when you build communities or you enter communities?
Yeah, communication is everything, and I learned early on in my leadership that you could do some magical things if you found creative ways to get into space with people where you can just have a dialogue with them that maybe they weren't used to having before. One of the stories that I share in the book was how I put together a community, just a community event, a community dialogue event where we had community members come in and we had a conversation with them. So nothing was steering this. Like, there wasn't a critical incident that we were responding to. We were being proactive and let's try to bring everybody together before something bad happens. And we had a really good conversation in there that day, and we talked about encounters with the police, and we answered questions from community members. People shared some experiences that they had had with law enforcement that weren't positive for them. And we had a good back and forth dialogue. A couple weeks later, now I'm navigating a critical incident where we're searching for somebody, and we know this individual is holed up inside a house. I'm the watch commander that is on duty, so it's my scene. I'm in control of the scene, and we're formulating a plan to go inside this house to get this guy. And that is always, the most dangerous thing that we can do in law enforcement is when we know somebody is inside a house, they know we're outside coming in to get them.
Mm-hmm.
And you just never know what's waiting for you when you kick open that door or force open that door or what have you. So we're putting together a plan to go in there. And while I'm out there, this guy walks up to me and he starts talking to me. He's like, "Hey, man, the guy inside that you all are after is my cousin. And he called me. He's inside. He's just scared about all of this." And so I'm able to have a conversation with that gentleman out there. And he helps us to get his cousin to come out where we don't have to kick in the door and run in to go get him. So he comes out safely. Nobody is harmed. We take him into custody. No issues. We don't have to use any force against him or anything. And it turns out the individual that came up to me was somebody who had attended that session, that community event that I'd held a few weeks earlier. And what he told me that day, he says, I normally never talk to the police. I don't get down with the police like that. He said, if it wasn't for that event, I would have never come over here and felt comfortable enough coming to talk to you about my cousin being in there to work with you to help get him out. And so that one example early in my leadership journey just really solidified for me the benefits of getting into space with people, especially if you can do it before a crisis or a critical incident has happened, to start building up some of those relationships and just even the comfort level that people may have to where when you are in a crisis, those individuals feel comfortable communicating with you or talking to you or what have you. And so from there, that really highlighted for me just the importance of of having open lines of communication. And like I said, once I became a police chief, and then I go to Ferguson, and so now I'm working in a very complicated community with a very complicated history. I'm going after the people that are the loudest, that have the most critical things to say, about the department and what their experience has been. One, so I can hear and I can learn from them, and I can try to incorporate their stories and their lived experiences into what I'm talking about internally with the department, to help the department better understand, why some people in the community feel how they feel, or why it seems like, nobody over here in this neighborhood, will talk to us, or will ever, just seem to have a pleasant expression, whenever they see us come around or anything like that. Where the more that we can communicate with people, and we can start to identify, what are some just base level things that we can agree upon to lay a foundation to see where this relationship can go, or where this partnership can go. One thing that I talk about often is you can have a relationship with anybody. Mm-hmm. Relationship doesn't automatically equal a friendship. And so I've had great working relationships with people that I would never go sit down and have a cup of coffee with them, because we were just, at completely ends of the spectrum on a lot of things. But I understood the value of that relationship, and we had a foundation that we can build on, where, it was mutually beneficial for us to be in relationship with one another, for the betterment of the community at large. And so when you start to understand the relationships that are out there, or the potential relationships that are out there, and how they can be beneficial for the community,
right,
that can really drive, when you see someone and it's someone that you may look at as an adversary, or somebody that is on the opposite aisle of things than you are. And those are the normal things that add to the divisiveness that we see in communities. But when you're thinking about the community at large and what can be beneficial for the community, you start to see people differently. You start to see entities differently, and you start to see, or at least, it should be churning some thoughts on innovation of, if I was able to make some inroads with that individual or with that group, like, what are the possibilities in that? Like, what could that look like? How could I be a resource for them? Mm-hmm. How could they be a resource for me? How could our relationship be a resource for the community at large? And once you start experiencing, some of those little small wins, or the small inroads that you make with people that you probably didn't think that you could ever, forge a relationship with, that's where you start creating things that your community hasn't seen before. And that's where, you're off on a trajectory of progress, positive progress, because I'm always at the positive progress, or the impact that you're looking to have, making sure it's a positive impact, not a negative impact. And that's what my experience has been, and what I've seen in those spaces.
That's incredible. When I started following you on social media, and I heard you talking about this, that was my first thing. Jason, have to come to our podcast, because we literally saying we are looking for leaders who are bringing positive impact, and we emphasize that.
Yes.
And when I heard that this is, and then of course you talk about this in the book, and I also was fascinated how, to me, the concept of cathedral change, it's when we are working on something and we might not see results. Mm-hmm. While we are in this position, or
yes.
while we are maybe not even, it all comes back those days in Europe when they were building these big cathedrals. Mm-hmm. Most of the time the people who were building or creating the plans for it, they wouldn't live to see the end of the construction.
Yes.
And this cathedral thinking kind of really stuck with me. When I was reading your book, you talk about this a lot, that mm-hmm. when we lead with the intention, knowing that the change might come when you will be done.
Yes. And that is the whole concept of the book, is trying to help leaders understand. And when I say leaders is not a title. Mm-hmm. there are plenty of people in communities that are leaders in their communities or leaders in their spaces, and you don't have to have a title to be a leader. But trying to help leaders understand that when you are a leader, whether you self-identify yourself as a leader or other people identify you as a leader, there's a responsibility that comes with that. And the responsibility is to the people that you lead, and the responsibility is to the impact that you are trying to have in whatever space that you're leading in. And one thing that is key in that is it's not about you as the individual. Like, it cannot be about you.
Right.
So decisions that I'm making as a leader and how I'm trying to lead this organization and how I'm trying to show up in the community, I can't do it from the space where I'm thinking about just solely how's this going to benefit Jason Armstrong. I need to be looking at it from the space of how is this beneficial for the community at large. And when you lead from that foundation, when you lead from that lens, I should say, you're trying to build a foundation that is sustainable. And if you're doing things that is for the betterment of everyone, what you will find is that work is often slow. Like, it takes a long time to get momentum and traction when you are doing community work. And I always like to think about it is I start with the end in mind. So once I'm done here, what do I want this to look like? Can I look back on my time here in this leadership seat and be proud of what I did? Can I look back and see how we've made some progress, how we've done some things that were innovative and creative, that we take some risk in this space? Like, those are all the things that I know when I'm done here that I want to be able to look back on and see. I don't want to just play it safe, because that is an internal thing. If I play it safe, then I'm playing it safe to help and benefit me. And showing up as a leader, it's not about you, it's about everybody else. And so, are we taking challenges? Are we taking risks? Are we trying things, knowing that everything isn't going to work? But what I've been proud of is things that I have fought for, that I laid a foundation for, because I knew that they were beneficial for the organization, beneficial for the community. And it was things that when I left, those things had not happened. But years later, I saw them happen.
You got
Somebody,
that message,
exactly.
right?
Somebody reached out to me and said, "Hey, I thought about you today because I just signed off on this. And I remember how hard you were fighting for this years ago." And that victory was no less of a victory for me in how I felt about it, knowing that, all right, somebody else is getting the credit for it, because at the end of the day, it doesn't matter who gets the credit. If you are intentional about how you show up for people, you will get the accolades and you will get the credit for things. If you're doing it to get the credit, then you're doing it for the wrong reasons, and you're not going to have the impact that you could have, by doing it. And that was another key thing that I learned throughout my journey is we don't always recognize or notice or even know that people are watching us.
If you're a leader, you're on the spotlight.
Yeah. Like there have been so many times where I've seen somebody in person and they've shared something with me that let me know that they have been watching me throughout my journey.
Wow.
And it's one of those things where, I wouldn't have done anything differently if I'd have known that they were watching. But the fact that when you're intentional about how you're showing up and your commitment level to doing the work, and you're willing to grind it out because you believe in it so much and you have just a genuine passion for what it is that you're doing, people take notice of that. And, I've been blessed with a ton of awards. I was inducted into the National Law Enforcement Officer Hall of Fame. Like, I've gotten all of these great things. And I'm appreciative of every last one of them, because it's a validation for me that I was doing it the right way, or that I did it the right way. But that wasn't the aim. And the aim was like how like I have the utmost confidence that things could be better in a lot of communities in this country, in particular between people in the community, impacted communities, and law enforcement. Like that is the foundation of my outlook on what it is that I'm trying to impact, because I've experienced it and I've seen it firsthand, and I've done it in places where a lot of people didn't think that it was possible to be done. And I'm not saying that I accomplished everything, but going to a place like Ferguson, even to this day, years later, I still meet so many people that when we're having a conversation, especially people in law enforcement, that they are still just dumbfounded at the notion that I had the courage to take the Ferguson chief job, because so many people would never have taken that job. And I get asked the question a lot, why did I take that job? Like, was I looking to make a big name for myself by taking such a high profile job? Well, the truth of the matter is I was starving for an opportunity, because I had just been robbed of an opportunity to be a police chief and to show what I could do in that space, that I was just looking for an opportunity. And just so happened, as fate would have it, that opportunity came from Ferguson, Missouri. And I couldn't be, picky or choosy of what my opportunity was going to look like, because I was starving for an opportunity, and that was the opportunity that presented itself for me. And so it wasn't about me trying to do something to get into the national spotlight and to get all this attention. I felt very convicted that I understood enough about this profession and communities and how you could do this work in partnership with community, that I could drive some change up there. And we were able to do that. And when I went to my next chief position, the same thing, came into a place that had some challenges going on at the time, and we needed to drive some change so we can improve relationships, in the community, and having some success in doing that, throughout my career, just really solidified for me what can be done if you are intentional about how you show up. And that's why intentional and intentionality is such a key, a key characteristic, and what I think about leadership, and what needs to be present for all leaders if they're going to show up and they're going to have success in how they lead people.
Thank you. When I was reading your book, that story when the chief, was it the chief of police that called you and said that the project came through, the one that you worked on?
Mm-hmm.
So when I was reading it, that's what came to my mind. I was thinking, wow, you talk about people and you talk about partnerships. You talk about vision, this cathedral vision that I like having in my head. Like, how do, like, if you see something that others do not probably see yet, because usually I was also, it's in your book, or maybe it's in one of your videos, when you were saying how your brain works differently. Your brain goes, you go backwards,
Yes.
and from backwards you go forward and you see how to resolve the problem. The majority of people do not think this way. So I thought that it's incredible how, okay, your brain is different, you have the vision that so far away that majority cannot even think of, but then you bring people together on this journey, and they go with this journey on you, but they also remember when you are not even a part of this community, they still remember to call you and let you know that it happened. So which means you are not just a leader, you are a leader with big L. I'm a leader, I consider myself in my organization, but I'm still learning how to do it, how to bring people together to this shared vision and energize them, ignite them for this change.
So I would say we're always all learning leaders. I definitely do not have all of the answers, and I have not been successful in every single thing that I've touched. But what was key for me, I learned very early on that everybody was not going to like my decision.
Mm-hmm.
Period. Like there is very few instances where you can please everybody. So I learned very quickly as a police chief that that cannot be my aim or my goal, is for everybody to be happy with my decision, because it's never going to happen. One thing that I learned when I had the coaching session where, so I had taken this, it wasn't an IQ test, but it's like one of those leadership tests where they kind of tell you what your leadership style is.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm having the coaching session with the person that did the test for me, and she is explaining to me what my results are showing, and how, like, the way that I work and how I lead is I go back and I go arch like this, where she said a lot of people just go in a straight, they just move forward. And so they have a problem in front of them. All right, how do I tackle this problem? And I move forward with it. She was like, my style is I go back and then I come up and I go over. And it was great for me to hear that and learn that. For one, it helped me know that I wasn't crazy, first and foremost, because I regularly had challenges with helping people understand, like, where I was trying to take us.
Mm-hmm.
And when I had that session, it was very helpful and beneficial for me, because it helped me understand that I had to do a better job of explaining to people why I saw what I saw, or why I felt so convicted about the direction that I was asking people to go in. And one thing that became a part of my leadership and how I showed up is I realized that I owed everybody an explanation. I owed everybody an explanation. If you are a leader listening to this, you owe everyone an explanation. And when I say that, it's, if I made a decision on something, or if I implemented something, or if I have this grand idea that I want us to do, like, I can't just throw it out there and expect people to get on board with it because I'm the chief, because I'm the leader. It doesn't work that way. And I had to spend more time explaining why I felt, or why I thought this was a good idea. Also creating space for people to challenge me on those ideas, and allow people to chime in and weigh in on if it's something that I want the organization to do. People have to have some voice in that process as well. And so really what I tried to implement is, I may have a big idea, but I also understand that majority of the time I'm not going to be the person that is going to be implementing, this grand idea. It's going to be my staff that is largely going to be working on it. And so how do I create a space, and how can I get people motivated and excited about doing something that they may not see the value in, or they may not understand the value in it? And a lot of times what I try to do is give them some freedom for creativity in that space. In my book, I talk about my community pie framework,
Mm-hmm.
and empowerment is the E in that framework. And one thing that I had to be willing to do is I had to be willing to give away some of my power and authority at times, if I wanted people to give me everything that they had to give me on something. Because if it's my big grand idea, and sometimes people can see the value in it, sometimes they're skeptical of it, and understandably so, because a lot of times we were doing something, or I was trying to do something that didn't exist, or there wasn't a blueprint for this. So we were doing something that was new in this space. And so how can I take my idea of wanting to see something new, or wanting to try something new, knowing that I need these other people to actually bring this to life for us to actually try this. And so I have to give them some freedom of creativity, in that space. The I in PI is innovation. And so challenging people like, hey, I have this big grand idea. I can't do this without you. And I need you to bring your expertise or your creativity or the magic that you have within you to help me see this. And so I'm explaining the vision of what this should look like at the end once we're done here with it. But I'm also giving you a critical role to play in what it looks like in us to get there. Now, we're going to have some touch points along the journey for me to check in to get an update on how it's coming, where if I'm seeing something that I don't like, I have an opportunity to redirect and to chime in and to do that. But a lot of times it was coming up with the idea and understanding that I have to explain this to people. And it doesn't matter who they were. It didn't matter if it was my superior. It didn't matter if it was the person right under me. It didn't matter if it was the newest employee in my organization who had only been there 3 days. Mm-hmm. If it was something that I was asking them to do and they didn't understand the why behind why we were doing this, I owed them an explanation. And for me, that was key in how you do that when you have the big idea and you need a team of people to get on board with you to make it happen and to see it. Is you have to give them some freedom and some creativity in that space. And that's how, ultimately you give yourself the best opportunity to get buy-in from people to go with you on this crazy journey that you may be taking them on. Because sometimes, what I was trying to do or what we were trying to create, when you looked at it, like it was something that was really crazy. But when they have some skin in the game, that's often how you get them on board and motivated and moving in the same direction.
Yeah, wow. A lot to learn. Basically, you are a compass. Your team becomes your GPS that is broken into pieces, your journey, and that's how you guys move together in one direction.
Yeah, and that's a great analogy to compare, because even with the GPS, you can take different turns to get to the same destination. And for those of us that are in leadership positions, like sometimes that is hard for us to do. And I can admit this for myself, that it is hard for me to do that at times, because I wouldn't have made this left. I would have kept going straight and I would have turned left further up. But it's like, do I need to say anything about them going left right here? Because they can still make that turn over here and still get to the same place. And that's where we have to exercise patience as leaders with allowing our people to do more in some of those spaces, instead of being too overbearing and saying that, well, it has to look like this right here in order for us to get there. Sometimes give people a little flexibility.
And trust again, and trust.
Exactly.
And I noticed that when I was reading your book again, a lot of things that I learned from you was related to communication, how you communicate with your team, and how you build connections. Because there are so many great stories on how you build connections through basketball, through going into communities, and I don't even remember, there was. Maybe you can give me a better story right now, because you connect. Oh, there is another one which I really loved, when there was a new police officer on your team, and you guys were going somewhere and he wasn't sure whether he could lead or not.
Yes.
And you're like, well, that's
and I assigned it to him.
Yeah, and
yes.
I'm sure that was a great connection, and I'm sure that after that you guys built so much trust from that point. Because to me that was like, oh my God, I need to remember this one for my future references.
Yes. What I found throughout my career, internal to the organizations that I worked in, and I don't think this is unique to law enforcement or public safety, I think this exists in all organizations, is what prevents an organization from reaching their full potential oftentimes are the relationships that are inside the organization. And what I have experienced is, too often we have organizations where the people inside that organization either do not understand or they do not value the significance of connectedness to the people, to the other people inside the organization. That's where you have people that talk bad about their coworkers, or they spread rumors and lies about their coworkers and things because they don't value the level of connectedness that they need to have with everybody in their organization for the organization to be successful or to be functioning at optimal levels for success. And so I was always after trying to create an environment and trying to lead in a way where people saw that connectedness was something that was critical for an organization that I was the leader of. And one ways that I found that I tried really, I would try different things in trying to build up connectedness, and everything didn't work. And one of the stories that I share in the book that was a failure in trying to do this was I had created this advisory committee inside the department made up of people from all of the different parts of the organization, but this wasn't for supervisors, this wasn't for command staff members. I wanted people who were not command staff members because that was often who I heard the complaints from, and so I wanted to have a mechanism where they had direct access to me. Mm-hmm. So I create that, but then that created a unintended challenge and problems from some of my supervisors and command staff because they didn't like the fact that other individuals were getting information that they weren't getting, or they were getting it before they got it, and different things, and it failed miserably. And that was okay because I was willing to try it. And oftentimes one thing that I think people have come to appreciate this about me. Now I have to be careful with it to make sure I don't rub people the wrong way with it. But like, I have just the utmost confidence at all times. Like, it doesn't matter what the task is. Like, I always think that I can do it. I always think that I can be successful in whatever it is that I'm trying. And the thing about me is I want that for everybody. Mm-hmm. Now, for a lot of people, that is not their reality. And a lot of people, have a lot of self-doubt and are much more reserved in what they think they can do. And what I've had to learn is that I can't force my confidence on other people, because sometimes I would try. Like, if somebody is saying, well, no, I can't do this because of this, or I don't think and like, that drives me crazy to hear when somebody is talking like that, because my mind doesn't work that way. And if it is the most outlandish thing in the world, like, I think I can do it. And so I had to balance when I forced that on people, also recognizing, okay, this is not a good situation for me to do that. And so the example that you're talking about with that new officer, and we had a funeral procession that we were leading. And so somebody has to be out front leading it. Mm-hmm. And as we're meeting and we're trying to put together the game plan for this procession, and the officer's like, all right, well, I know I'm not going to be leading because I'm brand new. And clearly I'm not, qualified to lead this. And as soon as he says that, I said, perfect. You're leading the procession. Then I bring him to the side and just give him a pep talk. Like, look, you're not out there by yourself, man. Like, we're right here. I'm just going to be right behind you. Like, this is all that I need you to do. Like, you're in control of this. And if it starts to feel like it's getting out of control, say, you can always just stop. Because if you stop, everybody else has to stop. And so if you feel like you get overwhelmed in it, dude, just stop. Because everybody's going to stop. And then just call me, and then we can make adjustments. But I don't think we're going to need to do that, because I have confidence in you. And I want you to have as much confidence in yourself that I have in you right now. Come on, man, let's go get this. Now, another thing about that officer, he was a football player. Like, yeah, I remember he was a college football player. And as a former athlete myself, like, I know things that typically get athletes going. Mm-hmm. And you can challenge them, in certain kind of ways. And that was all that I was tapping into in that moment. It was more athlete to athlete than it was supervisor to brand new officer. And we went through it, and he did it just fine, and we didn't have any issues. And afterwards, all right, come back to him. It's like, all right, man, I knew you could do it. I need you to have more confidence in yourself with the things that are going on, because I think for a lot of people, that's kind of their auto default is, a lot of people want to play it safe, and a lot of people don't want to take certain challenges or take certain risks because that gets outside of their comfort zone. One of the things that I said at the keynote that that you said, I said, if we're right here, I said the impact that we want to have is all the way over there, and the only way that we get to it is we have to separate ourselves from our comfort zone. And that is extremely hard for people to do. And maybe it's the crazy part in me, but I was somebody that was willing to do that, and I saw the payoffs from doing it, and that just fueled me to do it more and more.
When I listen to this, and you have a daughter, I have a daughter. I love Alice in Wonderland. All the crazy ones are good. But if you believe in something and you really truly believe in it, it's going to happen. Now, when we just going back to building confidence again, the leadership building confidence, there is no way to build confidence in something without doing it. And that again, I love that story. There is another thing that I learned also from your book, and I think it's very important to any leader to keep in mind, that there is a system wherever you are. It doesn't matter which organization, if it's government, if it's corporate, even if you run your own business, you build a system around it. So there is a system, and then there is your team. Very often you are going to end up in tension and conflict, and there is your values in between. And you guide us very good through your book how to resolve this tension and conflict very often, how to stay true to the system that you are, because if you're going to be challenging constantly, you're not going to be that successful. But you're still true to your values. How do you do it? What are the main principles?
So for me, that part was simple. You mentioned my daughter. So my family, I hold nothing in higher regard than I do my family. And so for me, in all of the chaos and all of the challenges and everything that I had to navigate, with decisions being mine to own, I made decisions oftentimes from the lens of when I walk through the door of my house at the end of the day, the people that are looking at me when I come through that door, would they be proud of the man that made those decisions that day? That was the bulk of it for me. I have a son, making sure that I set a good example for him, knowing the kind of man that I want him to grow into. So I thought heavily about that, because it is so chaotic in government and in the law enforcement profession, and just all of the things that come your way. Is the people that are the closest, that mean the most to me, could I explain my decisions to them, and would they be proud of me? And then the second part of that is when I'm all by myself and I'm looking at that individual in the mirror, can I tolerate who I'm looking at? Those were the two main things for me. Doesn't mean that I always made the right decision. But that was, when we talk about values, that was how I stayed true to myself, and being authentic to myself in the positions that I was in. Because what I realized, and even in the concept of I'm done here, you often talk about when you're in a leadership seat, you're in that seat for a finite amount of time. None of us, rarely does anybody sit in that seat forever. And when I'm done in that seat, I'm thinking about when I look back on it, like I want to be proud of what I did in that space. And so that was always a part of what I was thinking about and how I moved and how I navigated. Even when I was doing things that I knew, the masses may not like, or it was going to be controversial or whatnot, like I had to really, really believe in it and feel very strongly that what I was doing or why I was doing it, it was for a good reason and for the right reason. I'll never forget um, one of the departments after I had left as chief. The person that was in the seat after me undid one of the things that I had implemented. And I never took anything like that personal. New leader is in place, so new leader is going to do, what they want to do. And it was something that the department, by and large, like they did not like when I made this decision. And I knew they weren't going to like it when I made the decision. But I felt very strongly, and to this day, feel very strongly that it was the right decision for what I was trying to build for that organization, for the community as a whole. And I had a conversation with the individual, like after they had made the change to undo what I had implemented. And we're having a conversation, and they're like, man, like I thought by making this change it would have accomplished this, but it didn't. Like they're still upset about this and that, and they're not happy about these things over here. Now these people over here are upset because they liked what I had implemented, so now they're upset, and that's often how decisions work. Is you can't go into it just automatically thinking that it's going to make this group happy or this person happy and all of these other things. You just have to feel strongly, and you have to be convicted that it's the right thing to do, because you can handle the outcomes of it a whole lot better when you trust and that at the base of this is the right thing to do, or I know what I'm trying to accomplish by making this decision or implementing this or making this change or whatever it may be. And it's not as simple of just thinking, well, if I do this, then it'll make people happy. People are a lot more complicated than that, is what I have found. And so it's having your values a part of your decision-making process as you're doing things, and being okay with whatever is waiting for you on the other side of that decision. Whether you make people happy, whether you make people upset, whether it causes you some heartache or some tension as a result, you can handle those things a whole lot better if your decision was rooted in what your values are, and your values are rooted in what's best for the larger community, or for the greater good, or for people outside of yourself. And that was what I always tried to do and try to think about.
And my next question is going to be, because that started pretty early. You have a story when you stopped somebody on the road.
Yes.
You were yourself back in your early 20s.
Yes.
And the person you stopped was probably 19, 20.
Mm-hmm.
You had different choices that you could make, and you could probably talk about the story yourself, but you stayed true to your values. You were very young.
Mm-hmm.
My question is, again, did you have a role model from your maybe childhood who helped you to form your values? And then maybe together with this question we can talk, how did you choose the life of service? We know you talk in your book about that there was an element of FBI, maybe going to FBI, and there is a story how you ended up in police. So,
yes.
But in general, the life of service.
So, as far as the role model piece, I would say just growing up, my parents, I would say were good role models, and just being a good person. Um, and that's where, like, a lot of the stuff that I've done, like, I didn't think much of a lot of it or think that I did anything special or whatnot. Like, at the end of the day, like, I did what I would hope anybody else would do if they were faced with that same scenario in that same situation. And with the young man that night, um, just as I started collecting information, I believed what he was telling me. And one thing that early on in my career, I would say that I was very anal about is I only wanted to put people in jail who deserved to go to jail. And the same token, if somebody deserved a break or they deserved um, just some decency from a law enforcement officer, I wanted to be the officer to give that to them. And that was my experience with that young man that night. Is once I collected the information, I felt very strongly that he was telling me the truth, and that somebody somewhere else had made a mistake, and that he did not deserve to be going to jail that night. And just as much as I wanted to put bad guys in jail who deserved to be there, I didn't want to put people in jail that I didn't feel as though deserved to be there. And that's why I did everything that I could do that night to just try to get the evidence that I needed to be able to show, my supervisors that this young man didn't deserve to go to jail that night. And luckily, we were able to get it confirmed before I dropped him off at the jail, and he was able to go home that night. But yeah, like, public service, this was not something that I had on my radar coming up. People ask me the question, did you always want to be a police officer? Absolutely not. I never thought about being a police officer for real until I was about to graduate college, and I saw this program that that they were trying to recruit college graduates to become police officers. As you mentioned, I wanted to join the FBI. Like, that looked like the cool thing to do, and I thought that I was cool enough to do that. But they weren't hiring people with no experience coming straight out of college, at least not criminal justice majors. So I had to figure out another route to go, and I found out about the program that I ultimately got into, and that got me into the profession. And I often joke, about it. It's the truth, but, I say it jokingly that I'm one of the few people that got into policing for the money, because they were offering this big $30,000 bonus to sign up to become a police officer for this program that I got into. And if it wouldn't have been for that big bonus, I wouldn't have been motivated to do that program. And so I probably wouldn't have ended up in this career field. And so for me, the more appropriate question is not why did I get into public service and law enforcement? It's why did I stay in it? Because my commitment was only 4 years. So that's all I had to do to fulfill my obligation to it. But once I got in it, I saw that I was different from a lot of my colleagues, and I just felt that I was unique in this space, that I brought something different to the profession. I was very young when I started, and I don't know, I could connect with people in the community, a different kind of way, and I really leaned into that. And we know in this country the challenge history that a lot of minority communities have with law enforcement, and that was something that, as I started to mature in the profession, I really just felt the responsibility there, to show up and to try to drive something different in that space. And what did it for me was when Mike Brown was killed in Ferguson in 2014, and I saw the riots and everything that they had to deal with, and then I read all of the reports that came out after that happened, and what I read about Ferguson was very similar to what we were experiencing in my agency in Georgia, and how some people in the community talked about us and their disdainment for us and all of these things. And that was the turning point for me, where I really started looking at what I was doing and how could I do more and what could I do to be more of a bridge in the community and to start trying to build up, some better relationships, because I was fearful that if we had a similar critical incident like the shooting that they had in Ferguson, that we would see a similar response from people in our community. And I didn't want that. I didn't want that for the community. I didn't want that for my organization. And when I looked around, there were no other minorities on our command staff. And so I just felt that it was on my shoulders to lead that effort and to try to bring as many people, with me along on that journey. And that's what got me going. And then once I started doing it, I started seeing the payoffs from it and was like, all right, why isn't everybody doing this? Because there's value here. And that's really what carried over once I started started getting chief jobs. Was I brought that same concept to being a police chief. And as an organization, like, we are going to put the community as the focal point of everything that we're doing. And so let's see how creative we can be in what we do with the community and build up as many relationships as we can build, because that's going to help us keep our community safe.
Thank you for tuning in into Connected Conversation. We are incredibly inspired by the potential of positive change within our communities. We invite you to be a part of our conversation, and we invite you to be a part of our journey. Please subscribe to our podcast to stay updated on our latest episodes. Your support is incredibly invaluable. It will help us to grow our community. We also encourage you to share your thoughts in the comments of each episode. Your feedback will help us to create even more meaningful conversations. We can inspire the change and connect with each other one conversation at a time.